Let's be consistent. We cry to high heaven that we are God-fearing and peace-loving nation, and therefore we don't believe in shooting people, bombing their homes, knocking down their cities with cannon. And we really are a God-fearing and peace-loving people, but certainly it's ungodly, hypocritical, and unmanly of us to say to the British and the French, sure, we're against this fellow Hitler, but being God-fearing, we can't shoot him, we can't bomb him, but we'll be delighted to see you do it, and we'll furnish the guns and the bombs. That is, provided you pay us double what they're worth, and in order that there may be no mistake about it this time, you'll pay us in advance. You see, we're against going to war ourselves, but we're not against your wars. You go ahead, we'll sell you the stuff. The majority of the people of this country are against Hitler, but don't want to get into this war in Europe. Our people think the best way to stay out of it is to be neutral. How is it proposed to stay neutral? Why, by regulating the sale of our products. It was satisfactorily proved that the sale of munitions to the Allies in 1914, 15, and 16 got us into the World War. Now, by selling again, we run the same risks. If the sale of products has a tendency to involve us, certainly the more we sell, the greater the risk of getting in. The more we sell, the greater the business and the profits, and the greater the profits, the greater our interest in the success of the customer. Our business slogan is, the customer is always right, isn't it? The embargo on the sale of munitions certainly limited the volume of our sales. It most certainly cut out blood money. So why did we raise it? Why did we open the gate and run greater risk? Why? To make sure that Hitler is licked. But then we would not be neutral, and we have pinned our hopes of staying out on our being neutral. It certainly does not make sense to raise the embargo and try to stay neutral at the same time. Also, the time has come when we have to answer the big question before us. How often are we going over there to bail out Europe? Will we have to do it every 25 years? In addition to going ourselves last time, are we going to send our children today? Are we going to be ready to send our grandchildren 25 years from now? Isn't it time to make a stand about this thing here and now? Are we so vitally interested right now that we want to contribute 5 million of the finest and strongest boys that the great mothers of America have produced? Are you mothers and fathers so deeply concerned that you want to furnish your sons? Also, let's look at this question from a personal viewpoint, which is the only one that counts in the long run. It's all very well and high-sounding to say, the government declares war, to say helplessly, as individuals we have nothing to do with it, can't prevent it. But who are we? Well, we right now are the mothers and fathers of every able-bodied boy of military age in the United States. We are also you young men of voting age and over that they'll use for cannon fodder, and we can prevent it. Now, you mothers particularly. The only way you can resist all this war hysteria and beating tom-toms is by hanging on to the love you bear your boys. When you listen to some well-worded, well-delivered war speech, just remember that it's nothing but sound. It's your boy that matters, and no amount of sound can make up to you for the loss of your boy. After you've heard one of these speeches and your blood is all hot and you want to go and hit someone like Hitler, go upstairs where your boy is asleep. Go into his bedroom. You'll find him lying there, pillows all messed up, covers all tangled, sleeping away so hard. Look at him. Put your hand on that spot at the back of his neck, the place you used to love to kiss when he was a baby. Just stroke it a little. You won't wake him up. He knows it's you. Just look at his strong, fine young body, because only the best boys are chosen for war. Look at this splendid young creature who's part of yourself. You brought him into the world. You cared for him. That boy relies on you. You taught him to do that, didn't you? Now I ask you, are you going to run out on him? Are you going to let someone beat a drum or blow a bugle and make him chase after it and be killed or crippled on a foreign land? Are the mothers of America ashamed to make this fight to stay out of this European war on the ground of their love for their sons? For what better ground could there be? Have you ever been in one of those huge veterans hospitals? It has been necessary to build to take care of the thousands of helpless and maimed cripples still with us from the last war. If you have, you will not need a reminder of what war can do to your boy, how it can render his life useless and broken at 20 and keep him cruelly alive for the whole span of it. If you have not, I advise you to go and see one of them, for nothing could bring home to you more clearly or tragically the fact that, in the last analysis, it is your boy who is going to pay the piper. Few there are who come back entirely unscathed, and some come back in such a way that you would find yourself praying for their release from pain. Those withered, elderly, spiritless men who lie and sit so patiently in their wards day after day in their hospitals, waiting for the end, as they have waited since they got there 20 years ago, were the flower of our boys in their time. It is not age that has brought them to this pass, for their average age is a little over 40. It is war. Like the unknown soldier who was one of them, they too had mothers and fathers who felt toward them as you do about your boy. Thank God, this is a democracy, and by your voice and by your vote, you can save your boy. You are the bosses of this country, you mothers, you fathers. And that brings up another point. If you let this country go into a European war, you will lose this democracy. Don't forget that. As you stand by your boy in bed, he is safe, but here is another picture. It may help you to build up resistance against all this propaganda which will almost drown you. Somewhere in a muddy trench, thousands of miles away from you and your home, your boy, the same one that is sleeping so sweetly and safely in his bed with you on his side, is waiting to go over the top, just before dawn, drizzling rain, dark and dismal, face caked with mud and tears. So homesick and longing for you and home, thinks of you on your knees praying for him. He is frightened to death, but still more scared the boy next to him will discover his terror. That's your boy, stomach as big as an egg. I know, I've had that sensation many times. Do you want him to be the next unknown soldier? The unknown soldier had a mother, you know, and a father. He didn't just appear out of the air. Do you want your boy tangled in the barbed wire, or struggling for a last gasp of breath in a stinking trench somewhere abroad? Do you want him to cry out, "Mother, Father, why did you let them do it?" Think it over, my dear fellow Americans. Can't we be satisfied with defending our own homes, our own women, our own children, right here in America? There are only two reasons why you should ever be asked to give your youngsters. One is defense of our homes. The other is the defense of our Bill of Rights, and particularly the right to worship God as we see fit. Every other reason advanced for the murder of young men is a racket, pure and simple. Amendment for Peace. I propose an amendment for peace to the Constitution of the United States. 1. The removal of members of the land armed forces from within the continental limits of the United States and the Panama Canal Zone for any cause whatsoever is prohibited. 2. The vessels of the United States Navy or of the other branches of the armed service are hereby prohibited from steaming for any reason whatsoever except on an errand of mercy more than 500 miles from our coast. 3. Aircraft of the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps is hereby prohibited from flying for any reason whatsoever more than 750 miles beyond the coast of the United States. Such an amendment would be absolute guarantee to the women of America that their loved ones never would be sent overseas to be needlessly shot down in European or Asiatic or African wars that are no concern of our people. Such an amendment, linked with adequate naval and military defenses at home, would guarantee everlasting peace to our nation. How would such an amendment ensure peace? In the first place, the United States is in no danger whatever of military invasion. Even the Navy and Army departments, which are always preparing for war, and the State Department, which is always talking about peace but thinking about war, agree on that. By reason of our geographical position, it is all but impossible for any foreign power to muster, transport, and land sufficient troops on our shores for a successful invasion. There is another bar to any invasion of the United States by the political dimensions abroad, which prohibit any one nation from leaving its own borders unguarded in order to make war on a foe 3,000 or 6,000 miles distant. Yet, if, by some incomprehensible diplomatic hocus-pocus, an agreement could be reached among certain foreign powers whereby they would forget their own differences for the time being and pool their resources in a joint effort against the United States, there still would be very little fear of successful invasion. Our fleet, bound by this peace amendment to stay close to home shores, would be on hand to repel such invasion at sea if, through some series of unforeseen circumstances and disasters, an enemy army did successful in landing on our shores, the Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico, or the Pacific, the entire manpower of this nation would spring to arms. Every American, every man and boy would be ready, without conscription, without pleading. Every American would be ready to grasp a rifle and rush forth to defend his home and his country. Yes, everybody would be in that rush, even the peace at any price people. They would forget their scruples. The pacifists would be among the first in line. The Quakers, the Mennonites, and the members of other religious faiths which are opposed to the bearing of arms would be in that rush to protect our children and women folk. History shows it. I know it from the experience of my own forefathers, who were friends. Militarists and pacifists, Republicans and Democrats, all Americans, regardless of race, creed, or color, regardless of political or economic beliefs, regardless of everything. All Americans would rush forth to defend their homeland. Therefore, with the invasion of our shores, an impossible military undertaking, the only war in which we can possibly become involved in one in which our people would have no interest and no concern, and no right to join. It would be one into which we should be thrown by some economic, political, or diplomatic intrigue, and not a war which we should wage in defense of our homes. And it is just such a war such as the late World War, that we must protect ourselves, and from all the evidence, such a war is now imminent elsewhere. Money. That's where we fit into the picture. Make no mistake about it. You can't fight wars without money. Everybody knows that. You can have all the airplanes and all the guns and all the warships and as many soldiers as you want, or as many as you can get, but you can't go to war without money. And remember, Uncle Sam has the money. When the European powers get through their present task of choosing up sides and get down to the actual fighting, both sides will endeavor to maneuver the United States into the war, on their side. Another question naturally presents itself. What of our territories and our dependencies? The answer is subject to great study and debate, but let us note here a few points. The Philippine Islands are now on their way to independence. They're not a defense necessity. Commercially, they are a liability. It is virtually impossible to defend them adequately. We should let them go. A bill to give Puerto Rico its independence has been introduced in Congress. We should let it go. The Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, Waco, and the Midway Islands are not indispensable to our national life. While American capital is invested in each instance, it would have to take its chances just as in all external investments. The balance of trade is against the United States in all these dependencies. We buy more from each of them than we sell to them. They are not assets. Hawaii and Alaska are our own territories. We cannot set them loose. It is virtually impossible, from a military or a naval standpoint, to defend them properly except at prohibitive cost. So I believe our defense of these territories would have to be by economic pressure. We would move the naval station and the huge military detachment from the Hawaiian Islands and such forces as we have in Alaska, but we would announce to the world that these are ours and that they are not to be touched, that while we will not go abroad to fight for them, we will exact every possible economic pressure against any power which might be tempted to take these possessions, and the United States is so situated that it can successfully exert economic sanctions.